She's been waiting, waiting. She's been waiting for so long, waiting for her children to remember. She's been waiting, waiting. She's been waiting for so long, waiting for her children to remember. Blessed be and blessed are the lovers of the lady. Blessed be and blessed are the mother, maiden, crone. Blessed be and blessed are those who dance together. Blessed be and blessed are those who dance alone. She's been waiting, waiting. She's been waiting for so long, waiting for her children to remember. She's been waiting, waiting. She's been waiting for so long, waiting for her children to remember. Blessed be and blessed are those who work in silence. Blessed be and blessed are those who shout and scream. Blessed be and blessed are the movers and the changers. Blessed be and blessed are the dreamers and the dream. She's been waiting, waiting. She's been waiting for so long, waiting for her children to remember. She's been waiting, waiting. She's been waiting for so long, waiting for her children to remember, to return, to remember, to return, to remember her shining face, to remember her dark embrace, to remember the healing within their hands, to remember her shining face, to remember her dark embrace, to remember the power within their hands, to remember her shining face, to remember her dark embrace, to remember the passion within their hands. She's been waiting, waiting. She's been waiting for so long, waiting for her children to remember. She's been waiting, waiting. She's been waiting for so long, waiting for her children to remember, to return, to remember, to return, to remember, to return.
Okay. So, Maka, take it away.
Welcome, everybody. I'm going to start with a postscript or a little footnote to history. I had the opportunity to present a performance ritual at the Parliament of the World's Religions in Salt Lake City in 2015 using Lauren Rain's goddess masks. And this was the procession in with all the 13 goddess masks. We used this song to proceed in. It wasn't Lunacy singing it. It was Ruth Barrett and several people in a little chorus, but that's a little historical footnote. Anyway, welcome. This was a 10-year project. I didn't work solid 10 years on it, but intermittently. And it's a project is a collaborative effort among several friends of the late Sparky Rabbit. And I would thank, first of all, to Ray Bailey for allowing me to pilot this project, and to Greg Johnson, who's there in the bright pink, for agreeing to go along with it. And they are today's guests of honor, and you'll hear from them a little bit later. Sparky, as many of you know, was a perfectionist. He left specific instructions about how he wished to release these two albums. Originally, they had only been released on cassette, and as we all know, the cassette consumption has gone the way of the dodo. Besides, they degrade. As Ivo Dominguez told me, he'd played them so much that he wore out cassettes and he had to buy them again and again until there were no more to buy. Sparky had originally wanted this music released on CDs, and that was the standard music marketing technology when he passed. He wanted all the credits, lyrics, and liner notes included, along with the new cover art by Keith Ward. And he wanted the albums released as albums, not as individual tracks. The distribution and consumption of recorded music changed between the time Sparky had intended to produce them and today, when we've finally been able to make them available to the public again. It's no longer feasible in the current market to accommodate all of Sparky's dictates, so we have tried to do everything he wished as well as possible within those constraints. Drew has led this project through the streaming labyrinth. I have tried to hew as close to Sparky's wishes as possible, and I suspect that Greg would share those desires with having all the ancillary material available to anybody who purchased the music. And I'm going to ask Drew now if you would please explain why we had to take this route and release the music via CD Baby.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there's the only reason to cut to the chase. The only reason to have physical media, if you're a musician working today, is if you are actually performing, and then you have something to sell at gigs. Distribution is gone. There's no point in it, and very few people would hear it. So, but on the flip side, or on the good side, this music is now part of the celestial jukebox, where anybody will be able to find it and listen to it and learn the songs and sing the songs and share them with people. So, it changes. Things change. And by the way, cassettes are back. Lots and lots of new releases are being released on cassette. So
Taylor
there you go.
Swift is selling them.
Yep. Anyway, I've been playing music for over 40 years. My first band's called Boiled in Lead, playing rock and roll, Irish music, and other things. And I actually had a full-time job in the music business from about 1997 to 2002, which was the same time as the peak of CD sales in the world. But now everything's really fragmented. People get their music by streaming, physical media. Some people still like CDs, although it's really hard to get CD players. Vinyl records, of course. I'm in my record store in White Bear Lake, Minnesota right now. So in that peak CD time, I ran my own label. And when digital music first came in, we were selling tracks for 99 cents a track. And that still made sense to keep track of the digital sales. But when I realized that the artist was selling more copies of a CD than I was as the label, it was time for me to get out of being in the label business. So I've sent everything over. All those licenses are gone, and I'm just concentrating on selling my own stuff. Even the boxes of, like, this one up here is a CD that is an album that I got when my band went on tour in 1991 in the UK, and our cash advance turned into a box of LPs that I'm still trying to sell some over 30 years since. And I also, these days you can make as few as 100 CDs at a time and have them look good. But again, nobody's doing distribution. This is a much better way to go. I mean, I really like physical media. I run a record store. I can touch a record and I can hear it. And so the whole digital music thing isn't that real to me. I listen to records most of the time, but if I'm trying to learn a song or share a song with somebody else, I grab a YouTube link and pass it along. So getting all this music back on that system is the only real move that really makes sense in today's world. Before we started, I'd sent Maka a link to a little video piece I did about the life of my friend David Stenzel, who passed away about 3 years ago. And he's the violinist in Boiled in Lead for many years. And one of his final wishes was that I make my band's music all available on YouTube. I had resisted for a long time because the money is not even worth splitting out. You don't even get paid unless you get 1,000 plays in a month. But it was among his last wishes that the music be released onto the celestial jukebox, and so that I've done it. If you're not on streaming, you're invisible nowadays. You're completely invisible. So in terms of trying to meet Sparky's wishes, well, there's some things we can't do anymore. Everything is about the individual track right now. You can't, there's a playlist that's the whole album, but everything is about tracks. There's, and in fact, I should have grabbed one. The term album actually comes from the 78 RPM era, where an album was a set of 4 10-inch shellac records all in a binder. So that's where album comes from. So with each track, there's artwork attached and pieces of metadata, but that's about it. So the liner notes are on Maka's website, and we also Sparky had a blog, but the password's long gone, so we couldn't do anything with that old resource. So so here we are. We're streaming, and hail Sparky, hail Lunacy. Onto the celestial jukebox. So
Thank you. So got another speaker coming up, and that is one of our guests of honor, Ray Bailey.
Well, Maka, when you said make sure to keep it to 10 minutes, well, my profession for 31 years was professor at the graduate and postdoc level. And what I used to do is hand out a very complex class notes, very thorough, and then I'd improvise off of them, tangents, questions, etc. But you all don't have the class notes. So last night I wrote it all out. It looks very professorial. I rehearsed it a few times. It's 9 minutes. I don't want to read it. That's too impersonal, too cold. So I'll improvise some bits from it. For one, top of the list was thank you, Maka, for doing all of this. I know you put in huge amounts of time and effort and money. And you came to me. You and I shared the thought of let's get this out there before we die. But I was stalled. You were not. You instigated, you insisted, and eventually I gave in and handed it all over to you. And you have soared, finding resources, finding colleagues, looking into things that I don't think even Sparky would have thought of in putting this thing out there. So thanks for doing all that. And as I said to you on the phone, it's not like you have a casual life and this was easy to stick into your life. No, you have a very busy life, helping others and your own life, etc. So thanks for all of that. And thanks, Drew, for the help that you gave. As I recall, you helped Sparky put out that CD, right? Is that right, Drew?
Sorry, I had to jump off.
Yeah.
Pardon?
He had to step away.
And thanks, Greg, for allowing this all to happen. And even bigger thanks for being half of Lunacy for the amazing music. Another thing I wanted to say is maybe like some of you others, I'm a music aficionado. I have over 1,300 LPs. I have hundreds of hours of audience and soundboard recordings. I have many terabytes of music from all over the world. And so when I first met Sparky, when he told the group of us there at the retreat, when everybody had taken too long to tell their name and their story, he just told us, you'll find out. And I nodded and said, yes, I'll find out. I didn't know that he was into music, etc. I've had many friends who have shared with me their compositions and their performances. And way too often it's a me looking on the ground, shuffling my feet, trying to think of something positive to say compared to the masterworks that I have, you know, in my collection. But Sparky songs and Greg songs and Lunacy, wow, the rhythms, the melodies, the complexities, the harmonies, the recording layers, just great. A desert island albums for sure. What else did I want to at least stick in here? But I know, Greg, you have a story about the Moon song, but maybe it's not PC to tell it. Besides, it's your story. But I'll briefly tell a story about Aphrodite's song. I too somewhat compose music, but I don't really play well on any instrument. Sparky would ask me to not sing along with him because I can't carry a tune, and my rhythm is not very good. By the way, Greg, I Am Here, that song, what is the time signature on that thing? 3-2, 3-4 in each bar? I can't count it, but I'm not good through them anyway. So I once composed on the piano a love song for Sparky. As usual with my melodies, it was redundant, each piece repeating, and I'm a terrible poet, so it was very embarrassing to sing it to him. We never mentioned the lyrics again, ever. But the melody, he was intrigued by the melody. And as happened a few times with Sparky, later he remembered the melody, sort of. He misremembered it. And in his misremembering it, he made it so much better. That's the melody to Aphrodite's song. So that's why I have a teeny credit on that song. That's basically it. There was 9 minutes worth of stuff, but I think that's enough.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, it was an honor. It's just too good to be lost. You know, it needs to be on the Celestial Jukebox. I love that term.
Oh, could I mention the other recordings I gave you, etc., and my hope around that?
Yeah, please.
Okay. When I turned everything over to Maka, included was around a dozen, maybe 10, maybe 12 audio cassettes. The way Sparky used to compose was he would tape himself trying to figure out a song. He'd also write out lyrics, and so Maka has those, and she has the cassettes. I remember Sparky's wish that once, well, the steps were Lunacy CDs, then downloadable album, then videos for each tune. For example, we started working on Kali Ma. We had an outline of what the video would be, and we would semi-jokingly say, once the video was done, we'd release it in India, and maybe it would become a Hindu hit. Kali Ma. So videos, and then release the cuts individually online. And then he thought he had about 2 CDs worth of songs in those cassettes in his notebooks to release. So I know, Maka, you're working on a place to archive all of that, and I hope it's accessible to the public. So maybe somebody can dive into all of that and find the songs and release them. We also had about a CD's worth of songs that we sing with our puppets, which could be children's songs. We thought we would release that too, but that probably won't happen. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. See, these are stories you wouldn't get any other way if there weren't this opportunity right here, this forum. This is great history stuff, I think. And it's been an honor to sort of pilot it, to be the ring mistress. With that. Greg, we're so happy that you are on board with this. And I'm hoping you can tell us a little bit about how it came about and what your involvement has, you know, what it's meant to you.
Sure, I'd be happy to. It's my honor to do so. Thank you, Maka, for all of your work and your team's work in making this happen. I really appreciate it, and Drew, you as well. So it's a kind of involved story, as many histories are. I was in art school here in Kansas City, and my friend Everett Wright, who's now passed, was kind of my sponsor here in Kansas City. He ran a company called Home Sharing that housed students with elderly adults that needed help around the house in exchange for room and board. And I lived with a crazy, wonderful lady named Clara that was just a block away from the Art Institute. Anywho, Everett, because I was an art student, I had moved from Kansas City from Iowa, where I was a studio potter in Iowa. And I had this giant van from taking pottery all over the Midwest to sell. And Everett said, "Hey, I'm starting this men's festival for this summer, and we need a big van to take all the food down. If we can use your van, you can come for free." And I went, "Okay, that sounds fun." And so I trucked with Everett to Lake of the Ozarks. Met a whole bunch of wonderful people there, Midwest Men's Festival. And one evening, it was an old Boy Scout camp, so it was had all these great little cabins and wooded paths and right along the lake. And one evening, I heard somebody singing on the pathway, and
Later, writers say, well, how can it be that they cause these things when we see that the chart can tell us stuff?
I followed. I followed that voice, and it was Sparky singing the Full Moon song. So I was intrigued. We met each other. We started singing together. And of all places, our favorite place to sing was the big communal shower in the men's locker room, because it was all concrete, reverberated, had great echoing, and we would sing in the shower for hours. It was really fun. And from that, we had the thought of singing more together. And so we made a pact to do so. And he would come to Kansas City, or I would go to his home in the Quad Cities. And we would make up songs, rehearse songs, make up melodies, make up percussion. And really, Sparky brought out in me an ability I didn't know I had, which was really lyric writing. And that became something that I really loved doing with Sparky. I had a musical background as a child. And one of my favorite memories was my dad would take me to I don't know why I'm getting so emotional. My dad would take me to the other side of town to hear the black choir. And it really put my Presbyterian church choir to shame, because they had so much feeling and so much joy. And that call and response kind of singing really took root. And you can hear a lot of that, as did sort of the random and improvised melodies in a lot of our music in Lunacy. Really comes from that sort of that way back, way back. So it was really really fun project. We recorded in a little tiny studio here in Kansas City, and I remember the technician like didn't bat an eye at anything. He heard it all, of course. But he was very, very supportive. And what's kind of interesting is that little studio, the building still exists, but it's no longer a studio. And it was right next to, and behind a very old Civil War cemetery. It backed right up onto it, which I kind of always loved. But we recorded in that studio both Lunacy and Hand of Desire. And it was a great time for me musically and as a creative artist. And I really enjoyed all of the times that Sparky and I had together. And Ray would come into it from time to time too, as well as my partner Bert. And Bert did the original artwork on both of the Lunacy albums. Bert and I have been together for more than 40 years, and once the pandemic kind of passed, we looked at each other and said, well, we've been together for 40 years, survived a pandemic, let's get married. And so we did. And we still live in the same great old house here in Kansas City. We did have a great coven here in Kansas City for years and years and years. It was an all-male gay coven called Sons of the Bitch. And many of those members have passed now, but Bert and I still practice on our own. I guess that's my song and dance, albeit with a little tears in between.
Thank you. Very moving. It's really wonderful background information and a revelation of who you are more than we knew before. Thank you. I do have a little intermission planned right here. Not an intermission, but some music. And guess what? Aphrodite song.
Start her up. And there we go.
Let those love now who never loved. Let those who have loved love again. By love alone. She says, I may be known. By love alone I may be known. Love is the only law I know. All things live and are my own. From me they come, to me they go. Let those love now who have never loved. Let those who have loved love again. By love alone. She says, I may be known. By love alone I may be known. Love is the only law that I know. All things live and are my own. From me they come, to me they go. Let those love now who never loved. Let those who have loved love again. By love alone. Who she says, I may be known. By love alone I may be known. Love is the only law I know. All things live and are my own. From me they come, to me they go. From me they come, to me they go.
So beautiful. Now a few words from our sponsor.
Uh-oh.
Would you tell us about the Pagan History Project and perhaps
Sure.
why that project is so important as a historical artifact?
Sure. And yes, we're the commercial break. So, so the Pagan History Project, it basically was modeled after, is an oral history project specifically, and it was modeled after the Smithsonian's project, the StoryCorps project, the Veterans History Project, the Holocaust Survivor, a few others. And the idea was we were losing so many people within the pagan community. And it was 2010, and a lot of people that I knew for years had passed. And when 2011 rolled around, there was a conference, still is maybe, down in Southern California called the Conference of Current Pagan Studies, which Jeffrey was part of, on the board of. And my good friend Sabina Magliocco, who's also a friend of several people here, who wrote Witching Culture and such, said, "Oh, you should present something, Todd." And I had talked to Jeffrey, and somehow or other, I gave him a bunch of topics, and one of them was on pagan history. And the object here was to create a format to record historical data, either by audio or video, basically by taping it. And at the time, we didn't have Zoom, and we didn't have any online way to do it. And we were going to go around with camcorders. And what we were hoping to do was get people from different areas to record people in their community that had been around, that might be passing soon, especially older people, and get their stories about what was going on with them in their area, you know. And for some reason, people seem to think we only wanted people with big names like celebrity pagans. And we didn't. We wanted anybody, because history's made by everybody. It's made by the people that are in the coven, as opposed to the high priest or priestess or the tradition holder. And I felt all pagans were storytellers, and they would jump on board. And we had a bunch of false starts. We were originally going to go through CSUN, which is Cal State Northridge. Because I got Sabina involved, and she was the head of the anthropology department there. And then we found out that the colleges or universities could actually take the project away from the community. The object was, we would have this, we would put it on a format, and then let it be that anybody in the community could access it. We weren't going to put it in some dusty basement somewhere, like so many pagan collections have landed up, like at the University of Santa Barbara. And that it would be, you know, people that were just interested in where did we come from? What was it like back in the 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s? Because at this point, that's how far back it was. People were you know, talking, you know, I would get calls in the early 90s who thought that paganism started like with Starhawk. You know, and I would say no. And in '87, we actually tried to do a film project when I was back east. Well, I was back here, but I was in California, but I was working with some people back east who were basically filming information. And the object was to just get this information and to preserve it and make it available to people. And not just people that were in the craft, but, you know, in the reconstructions, like the Celtic Reconstruction movement, the heathens, you know, Dianics, anybody that had anything in this big sort of tent that we call paganism would be involved. And we did have a lot of interest at the beginning, but, you know, I sent out tons of information to people, and then we got radio silence. People would say, "Oh yeah, I want to be interviewed," and then when we try to set it up, they wouldn't interview. So we had a bunch of false starts. We've gotten things over the years. We've been promised copies of several collections. There's a library and museum that is starting in Providence, Rhode Island, where I come from. By somebody of my acquaintance, and he basically, they are part of the Witches Almanac family, and he has copies of the Hans Holzer tapes that were done during the 70s. They're all on 16 millimeter, and we've been promised that once they're digitized, we would have copies. And he's got some great interviews of people that we lost. And so that's kind of where we are currently. What we've done in the last couple of years is we're currently hosted on the Compass website, which Jeffrey will maybe make some mention of Compass. And Mock has come in kind of as the muse of the program. And we've been basically getting people in different areas to record things. And hopefully we'll start putting them up. We're still having some, while we've got them in, now in the cloud, as opposed to being on a server, which is a heck of a lot easier. We're hoping that we'll be able to get people to actually start seeing them. And not just keep them on all of our, cloud systems. I don't know how many I've got on mine. I know Jeffrey's got some. I know Mark has done a bunch, and several other people like John here has done it. So anyway, that's kind of it. We're still looking for people to help out, people that they think might be good to be interviewed, so that we don't lose people or their stories, like we did with Sparky. That I'm sure that with everybody here, we could get enough stories about him and his life to preserve it with pictures. I mean, I've got some pictures of him back from PSG 83, and was very happy to have been part of the big and 84 and 85, and was of his big ritual that he did at one of the PSGs, where we had 13 dancing goddesses and 8 dancing gods. And it was an absolutely spectacular piece of work. So, and anyway, so maybe Jeffrey can fill people in on what Compass is trying to do.
So Compass is it's an educational it's an educational nonprofit. And what we're trying to do, we have a number of things. Rather than Compass having one thing that it's trying to do, it really is more of a service organization that is assisting these other pieces to do what they want to do. So we have various different projects. Each one of them is a spoke, if you will. And then the outermost edge of the wheel is the community. So we're looking for different projects that serve the community, and we're going along. We have about 8 spokes right now that we work on. There's a pagan teachers group that meets. There is we have a spirit walk that we've put together, which we should be planning here pretty soon. We have the Southern California Divination Conference. There's another conference. There are various things that we look to do that people can come together on. And we, of course, go in and participate in Pagan Pride, and PCR is here. PCR is Pagan Community Retreat. So we're doing local things, but that doesn't preclude people doing things elsewhere. So slowly growing as it goes along. And of course, we always need help. That's the big thing. You were going to say, Maka?
I was going to say hematite.
And hematite. Well, I didn't name them all.
Thanatopsis.
Hematite and
Well,
thanatopsis.
because I mentioned them because they're not local.
Right, they're not local. Hematite and thanatopsis are both on Zoom. Hematite is gathering together people who are doing prison ministry so that they can share resources, ideas, and that sort of thing. And thanatopsis has come together over ideas of death and dying, for pagans to support them with that. So all of that being in there. So doing what we can, and dealing with the usual vicissitudes of life as we go through with them. So that's about all there is with that. So Maka?
Thank you. So some of you people who are not local to Southern California, I am not local to Southern California, but I'm very active in Compass, and neither is Tog. So
No, not yet, not anymore.
there are opportunities if you want to help us with any of these projects, particularly if you want to interview people for the Pagan History Project. But I have another song here, and this is Greg mentioned the Sons of the Bitch. This is a song from that coven, I think. It was written by Don Engstrom. Was he in that coven, Greg? Oh, he's muted. I see you talking, but I don't hear you.
Greg, you're muted.
We met Don at the men's festival. He wasn't necessarily part of the coven, though.
Well, anyway, this is one of my favorite songs, and it's not. Sparky mentioned it's little kids singing it at school. You'll see what I'm talking about when you hear it.
Here it is.
Praising her names, oh sacred bitch, that holy witch, mother of magic, mother of fear, mother of laughter, mother of tears, mother of faggots, mother of queers, oh sacred bitch, that holy witch, praising her names, oh sacred bitch, that holy witch, mother of magic, mother of fear, mother of laughter, mother of tears, mother of faggots, mother of queers, oh sacred bitch, that holy witch, praising her names, oh sacred bitch, that holy witch, mother of magic, mother of fear, mother of laughter, mother of tears, mother of faggots, mother of queers, oh sacred bitch, that holy witch, praising her names, oh sacred bitch, that holy witch.
Okay.
Nice and irreverent. I love it.
And Maka, didn't we get the parental, wasn't there a parental guidance sticker slapped on that one by
I don't know.
somebody's software? I know we had one song that on one of these platforms we got the digital version of parental guidance sticker on it.
It might have been the
Super
Moon song.
Yeah,
Their
I'm not
vagina
sure.
Right. I don't know.
Anyway,
Thank you. So now we want to hear from Sparky's dear friend and coven brother from the Twisted River Witches, who was recently embodying the stag god, and I think has been involved in lots of escapades with Sparky, and that's Owl in Davenport, I think.
Just across the river in Rock Island, Illinois. Yeah, right there, right on the other side of the Mississippi. Hello, everyone. Maka, thank you again for all your work and including me in this. It's quite an honor. It's good to hear people that I've met through Sparky. And Greg, I don't believe we've ever met, but I just want to thank you personally for the music you helped create that has shaped so many of us. I mostly knew Sparky as a ritualist. I learned a great deal from him. One of the things that I felt like Sparky excelled at was seeing ritual design and ritual performance as an art that could be developed, and that there were specific technologies that could be used to do it better, and that he also brought in the artistic ethic of feedback to rituals. If you're going to do a public ritual, you have to take the public credit or face the public critique, so to speak. So I that's reflected in his music as I encountered it when I first met Sparky and learned about his music. That same kind of attention, that same kind of course, high standards. Sparky had high standards for things. And one thing he always taught as a ritual aesthetic was to combine and layer simple elements on top of each other to get kind of the synergy of that effect. And so for those of you who've talked about him, been in his rituals or seen his scripts, he really had a care for that effectiveness of sincerity and simplicity. And I think that's what, for me, as a budding pagan at the time. Hand of Desire and Lunacy those albums brought that to an otherwise, frankly, less accessible for me interface with pagan music until then. And so I just see that reflected in all of his creative endeavors. That simplicity, that sincerity, and how effective it is, and how much it speaks to so many people. That's why I'm very, very excited that this is finally going to be available, because I agree. I believe it has been lost for quite some time, and this will remedy that. Sparky was, we were in the Twisted River Witches coven together. It was a men's coven. We tried to make trouble where we could locally, and explore ritual. Sparky was always, again, seeing that as an art that could be explored and pursued and refined. And we were all the lucky beneficiaries of that kind of skill and that kind of inspiration. So that's how I feel about his music. That's how we felt about his presence. That's, he would take the simplest of phrases, of tunes, and make them incredibly powerful. So once again, thank you, Greg. Thank you, everyone part of this. Just an honor to be here.
Thanks. Some of you may have heard me mention from time to time a ritual called the Union of Earth and Sky, a ceremony for Thor and Freyr, which was a ritual that Sparky wrote and had a lot of help from Stephen Posh, who's supposed to be here today but hasn't shown up. But it was done at Return to Avalon, a festival in Wisconsin. And Chris Owl was the man in the moon with the nighttime stars. I've mentioned the nighttime stars, those little kids carrying the bread.
That's right.
Owl was the man in the moon.
It was wonderful.
And I was one of the mother's sons. So historically speaking, we had another song, the moon song.
The moon song.
And then we're going to open the floor, so be ready.
God damn it. Where'd it go?
Go.
And the full moon is her vagina spread wide, and the full moon is her vagina spread wide, with a wild realm of all possibilities, every possibility pouring out. And the old moon is a woman who weaves, and the old moon is a woman who weaves dark promises, whispered by the shadow bride. She will take you by the hand into the night. And the new moon is a cradle in spring, and the new moon is a cradle in spring, and the violet blooms, and the infant sees the sun, touch the earth and feel the seed growing out. And the full moon, is her vagina spread wide, and the full moon, is her vagina spread wide, with a wild realm, of all possibilities, every possibility pouring out. old moon is the edge of a knife, and the old moon is the edge of a knife, and the child dies, and the lover goes away. In the darkness all the stars are going out. And the new moon wears the horns of a god, and the new moon wears the horns of a god. He's the cup of wine, and the rain upon the rose. He's the sweet salt taste that lies on passion's breast. And the full moon is her vagina spread wide, and the full moon is her vagina spread wide, with the wild realm of all possibilities, every possibility pouring out. And the old moon is an eye in the dark, and the old moon is an eye in the dark, and the sleeper wakes, the illusion fades away. As the spider spins, here comes another day. And the new moon has her hand on a bow, and the new moon has her hand on a bow, and the huntress aims, and the arrow flies away. She is flying on a path to your heart. She is flying on a path to your heart. I am flying on a path to your heart.
Love it. Love it. Thank you. I forgot to thank two people, pretty important. One is Keith Ward, who did the new covers in Milwaukee, and the other is Cosette Panek, who did the web spinning that put everything. And that can be added to, so if people have stuff that's omitted from there that should have been there, we can add it. And I think we'll probably add a link to this recording as well. But Stephen was supposed to talk now. He's not here, so I will open the floor to anybody who wants to share anything about how this music has affected them or what they've seen done with it or whatever. So, and I think Jeffrey's the best person to shepherd that, so he'll recognize speakers.
Sure. If anybody wants to speak, raise a hand. You can find your hand icon at the very bottom. Some of you may already know. If you look where there is a heart and it says react, if you click on it, there you go. You can see there's a place right there where you can raise your hand. It's pretty easy to find now. So anybody have anything that they'd like to share? Oh, Chris is thinking about it. You go right ahead, Craig.
You know, I mentioned the men's festival, and early on, I mean, Sparky and I didn't have two nickels to rub together. I was a poor art student then. You know, Sparky was, you know, a working actor. And so we held kind of a working session at the men's festival. And literally, you know, asked people for money. And that's really how it happened. So people kind of gave us money for, promised money for the cassettes when they were finished. And that's really how we started, which was really great. And I remember we held that session in a basement someplace, again because of all the echoing that happened, and it was really fun to get that kind of encouragement and that kind of support.
We didn't have GoFundMe in those days.
We did
Yeah.
not.
Early Kickstarter.
Yeah.
Right, or that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Greg.
You
It's
bet.
always interesting to see how those things
Yeah.
start off.
Yeah.
Real grassroots.
Very.
As is the whole movement back in the day. And now it's, quasi-commercial. You can buy your witch license on TikTok or something. I don't know.
We need a license.
I've been practicing illegally.
Oh
Yeah.
no, let's keep that up.
That's the best kind.
There's a bumper sticker, right?
Yeah,
Practice
right.
witchcraft illegally.
Well, people don't understand today how important it was to stay in the broom closet back in the day.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm really glad that we have some artifacts, as it were, some art from those days to
Mhm.
celebrate, and it's now going to be made public, or now is public.
Mhm.
Tell your friends.
Yeah. Thank you again, everyone who joined the call today and everybody behind this effort.
Thank you for allowing it to happen, because
Mhm.
Excellent. Eldritch, you go right ahead.
Hi there. I
Eric,
think I'm new to most everyone here. My name's Eldritch. I'm originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
I
But
know
I-
your name, though. I have to tell you, I know your name.
Yeah, it's usually prefaced by that damn Eldritch, but you know.
That just means you did something good.
Yeah, I'm known for stirring the pot. I'm known for stirring the pot, and I along the way heard a lot about Circle Sanctuary, and I finally, after years and years and years, went to my first PSG in 2015.
Oh
And
my.
because I was working as a federal employee at the Library of Congress, and getting time off is really hard and things like that. And the Library of Congress and StoryCorps project is amazing. If you
Mhm.
haven't seen, spend some time at the American Folklife Center. It's amazing online. There's just amazing resources. But when I went to PSG, people said, I was like, a dozen people said you should have met Sparky. And I never met Sparky. And it touches me even now to know that someone is such an ancestor with such a legacy of love and music, and probably a pot stirrer in his own right, as I've heard. And I have just been enamored of and waiting and waiting and waiting for this project. So Maka, Gregory, everyone, thank you so much. It's truly legacy work. And in the group that I'm in called Stone Circle Wicca, it's a queer spirituality, ecofeminist Wicca thing. You know how these things go. And we recognize the descendants. So every time that we mention the ancestors, we also venerate the descendants. And a work like this is going to teach descendants for years to come. So thank you everyone. I really appreciate it. I went to Circle Sanctuary, and there Sparky was no longer attending, I guess, but it really raised the bar for what ritual should be.
he was
Public
gone by
ritual.
then. He was gone by then.
Yes. I did, and so Selena Fox, asked me to extend greetings from Circle Sanctuary. I'm ordained there. I was ordained in 2019, and I am just, well, I worked at the world's largest library. So hearing about the Religious History Project, I'm not a librarian, project manager, but I have this great love for people doing legacy work like this, and this is amazing, amazing work. And I think out of the group, Chris, did you and I meet at Circle Sanctuary with the uh,
It's
with the ritual? Would you mind talking about that? Because I think people should know that story.
sure, absolutely. And yes, we did. Yeah, it's good to see
Yes.
you again. Are you talking about the men's ritual?
Yes, yes. I'm very partial to men's rituals, men's gatherings. I think, men's gatherings are either 95% gay or 95% straight, and the 5% are annoyed. And and I happen to be in part of facilitating the ritual that year. And so, Chris, please tell the bits of the story.
Yeah, sure. I just it's just another example of Sparky's influence. I mean, we had a god pole, right?
Yes.
A god pole, right, which was carved. Um, Sparky, what Sparky gave, I don't know how else to say it, gave um, men permission to do again is to um, show care and devotion for their own body.
Yeah.
And their own pleasure. And so that was a celebration of that. The moment that I will never forget in that ritual was when, we had poured offerings of milk and singing chant, and then the thunderstorm just came, raining down upon us. And
Mhm.
that was just one of those that Sparky wasn't there,
But was there.
but was because that's what he left.
Mhm.
Like people who studied under him for ritual. That's the gift he gave. So yeah, that was, I saw your face. I'm like, oh, I remember that ritual. For a minute. So
Yeah.
thank you for bringing that up. Yes, it's
Oh, thank you for telling that story.
there. Yeah.
What a legacy.
You both of you. Anyone else? You go right ahead, Robin. You need to unmute yourself. There you go.
Yeah, hi everybody. Great to see so many
Robin,
friends here.
hi.
People. Lovely to see you, Ray and Greg. Wow. One of the proposed talking points was the reach of the music, and I just want to say that in the prior millennium, I was at a couple of Cowan weddings at different times, and one of them, you know how at weddings they have that thing where people start clanging on the wine glass with a fork, and it means the bride and the groom should kiss, and it's really obnoxious a lot of the time. But I was at this one wedding of some family friends. Most of my family was there too, and instead of the fork clanging on the wine glass, 13 participants, thank you, Anna. The bride and groom insisted that if you wanted them to kiss, you had to come up and sing a song for them.
Oh.
And I'm the kind of person that I listen to albums over and over again until I know them by heart. And so I knew Aphrodite's song very well. And at least one of the couples whose wedding I sang that at was then and still is conservative Christians, but they got a dose of Aphrodite song anyway. So
Good work.
because it's just such good music. It's such good music.
Thank you, Robin.
Ready for another song?
I think so.
Go Eye in the Dark.
In the dark. I've got it queued up, I believe.
She is an eye in the dark. She is an eye in the dark. Here is a guide in the night.
He is a guide in the night.
He says, touch with your heart.
He says, touch with your heart.
She says, see with clear sight.
She says, see with clear sight.
There is an eye in the dark.
There is an eye in the dark.
There is a guide in the night.
There is a guide in the night.
He says, touch with your heart.
He says, touch with your heart.
She says, see with clear sight.
She says, see with clear sight.
Eye in the dark.
Eye in the dark.
Guide in the night.
Guide in the night.
Touch with your heart.
Touch with your heart.
And see with clear sight.
And see with clear sight.
She is an eye in the dark.
She is an eye in the dark.
He is a guide in the night.
He is a guide in the night.
He says, touch with your heart.
He says, touch with your heart.
She says, see with clear sight.
She says, see with clear sight.
There is an eye in the dark.
There is an eye in the dark.
There is a guide in the night.
There is a guide in the night.
He says, touch with your heart.
He says, touch with your heart.
She says, see with clear sight.
She says, see with clear sight.
Eye in the dark.
Eye in the dark.
Guide in the night.
Guide in the night.
Touch with your heart.
Touch with your heart.
And see with clear sight.
And see with clear sight.
Eye in the dark.
Eye in the dark.
Guide in the night.
Guide in the night.
Touch with your heart.
Touch with your heart.
And see with clear sight.
And see with clear sight.
Touch with your heart.
Touch with your heart.
And see with clear sight.
There is one person I forgot to thank. It's kind of it's, not huge, but that is a man named Guy Frost, who is the librarian at Valdosta State University, where a lot of the archives are. And he found Greg for me. Try to find a Greg Johnson in the Midwest.
Yeah.
And he found the right one. And fortunately, Greg was on board. So I appreciate that he did that. I couldn't find him otherwise. I did try.
That is so funny. Thank him for me too. There's a lot of us out here. There's another Greg Johnson that lives 3 blocks from me.
Really? Yeah, well, he had found a couple of them, but we thought this sounded the most likely. And you responded when I contacted you, which was lucky for me. But I had exhausted all my research skills because they don't extend to as far as his librarian skills did.
Yeah.
So I did mention cassette. Did I not? Did I?
Mhm, you did.
This was a collaborative effort with a lot of people, as you can tell. And all I am is the ringleader or the ring mistress. The ring mistress. So now we can have more people talk. I wish Stephen was here, but he's not. So we'll fill it in with other people's memories, if that's what they want, or questions or whatever. Background stories.
There's a hand. Go ahead, Todd.
Well, I mentioned I never knew Sparky as Sparky. I always knew him as Peter. So when for years Maka would say, "My good friend Sparky Rabbit, my good friend Sparky," and I'd go, and she goes, "I'm sure you know him," and I'm like, "Who is he?" And then one day I saw a picture and went, "Oh my God, Peter!" I met him back in '83, as I mentioned earlier, and it was at PSG. We were camping. There were about 300 people there, I think. It was one of the early PSGs, and we were camping in a swamp. There was a swamp nearby. It wasn't the nice place we went the next year. And it was the theme that year, Selena, and at the time she was with Jim Allen, which people don't remember, although I love Dennis too.
I do.
But Jim and myself really got along because we were both Virgos. The theme that year was the arts. And so, of course, Sparky, being an actor and in theater and such, wanted to put on a theatrical production. And it was so interesting to watch the process that he used, because he had a vision, but as he talked to people, the vision changed. So it started off, I think it was supposed to be 3 goddesses and 1 god. By the time the actual production went on, we had 13 goddesses and 8 gods. And so we always thought the group of us that were part of that were doing the invocatory work always thought of it as the 13 moons of the year and the 8 Sabbaths. And some phenomenal stuff came out of that, and because of his direction. And I remember when we all processed out, that we just held each other and cried as a group. 21 of us just cried. Was it 21? Yeah, I think it was 21.
21, yes.
2 actually. We just were crying. I mean, from it. But the fact that he was so flexible on how, there was one god who was I don't know if anybody knows Buddy and Dorcas.
Oh yeah, Buddy, sure.
Yeah, and he was originally going to be the god. And I happened to be walking by, and I was known for the pan dance at the time. And Buddy said, "Peter, let's get togging." And so Peter looked and said, "Do you have your costume?" And I said, "Yes, I do." And so it changed. And it kind of worked like that with him, that he kind of changed the vision based on, his interplay with the people that were there. And as listening to the Moon Song reminded me, and I don't know if it was this particular PSG or another, but when you've got 200 or 300 people singing this, it is incredible. I mean, people will say, "Oh, I know there's all kind of controversy about using certain words." But when you're there and you're doing it, and you're under the full moon, it is magic. I mean, this was magic. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Tog.
That ritual is legendary. I've heard a lot
Yes, it is.
about it. And I also want to just, Buddy and his wife, currently called Daja, performed the Ray and Sparky's wedding, if I'm not mistaken, for hand fasting. Is that right, Ray?
What's the name again?
Buddy and Dorcas?
Sounds very familiar.
She said she officiated. She told me.
Oh, Oz.
No, she told Dorcas, now called Daja, told me she did it. Dorcas and she's married to Buddy, that Buddy he was talking about.
Huh.
Well, maybe Oz did it. I don't know. I wasn't there.
Maybe Oz did it. Yeah, it could. I could see Oz doing it.
Did, because I had a long talk with her after Allison died, and she said that.
I remember her name was Oz, and her companion, husband, whatever, played the trickster, Poconuts, etc., during the hand fasting.
Huh. Well,
was it Steve?
Is that this Dorcas you're speaking of? Is she in New Mexico?
No,
that's Oz.
No, that's Oz. That's Oz.
Oz in New Mexico, yeah.
Oz was the priestess at our hand fasting at PSG.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Did she have very long dark hair?
That's Oz.
That's Oz, because
that's Oz.
Dorcas has short dark hair.
Short hair, yeah.
Dorcas is a Southern gal, and Oz is a Southwestern gal.
PSG.
Yeah. What year was that, Ray?
1984. I met
That
Sparky
was a
in
big year. That was the year.
I think we saw it. Yeah, I think it was Oz. I think we were there.
Oh, I'm sure it was Oz. 'Cause we
Yeah,
went to
I'm sure. I think it was.
I
She was
remember
with
she and Sparky planning
Wolf
it
at the
so
time.
tightly.
Yeah, she was with Wolf at the time.
Wolf, that's right, Wolf.
Yeah, that's right. Because we did a bunch of stuff that in '84.
So Ray, how did you meet Sparky?
I met him at a retreat we were having here in Chicago, at least annually, sometimes twice annually. This time it was on Memorial Day weekend. And the original group was called Anarchists, and then they became Feminist Men, and then they became the Men's Gathering, and then they became Changing Men. When I went to the retreat, it was Chicago Men's Group. And the previous times I had been were enlightening for the times, early 80s, etc. But this one, the key people here in Chicago, new people in Madison and Iowa City, and they wanted to bring a spiritual element to the gathering. So Sparky was invited to be there. So first evening, everybody arrives, each gets their little bedrooms in what had originally been a nunnery. And we all gathered in the central pit and big circle, and people were supposed to give their name, where they're from, etc. And there was Sparky across the circle from me, laid out across three men, these famous men from Chicago and Madison, looking regal, and they had their hands on him, etc. I was like, who is that? And he was one of the last people to speak. And when it came around to him, as I said earlier, everybody had taken so long. We were exhausted. And he said, you'll find out. And I nodded and went, yeah, I'll find out. And that was, I started it. I want to say two things about Sparky. One is around names. His, I guess Stephen Posch would say his Cowan name is Peter Bruner Soderbergh.
Yeah.
And the name he took on was Sparky T. Rabbit. To be like his childhood puppet, Floppy J. Squirrel. I have that puppet. Towards the end of his years, Sparky preferred to be called Bruner, his middle name, because he was honoring his Scandinavian heritage and he was getting more into the heathen side of things. So he preferred to be Bruner Soderbergh, which translates as the brown one, meaning a bear, the brown one from Southern Mountain, Bruner Soderbergh. And he even had me call him that sometimes, although most of the time it was Peter for me.
This arrived with Sparky's stuff.
Yeah, I seem to, Bugs Bunny was very important to us. Yeah, one of the ways we initially, one of our, exploring each other, what do we have in common? Bugs Bunny, the trickster rabbit. The other one is I wanted to say how very important it would be, however you want to conceive it, to Sparky that the Lunacy recordings are being released. The huge amount of time and effort and money that Greg and Sparky put into the initial recordings, I'm quite sure they never recouped their financial costs on that. And then years later, Sparky did remastering and adding some bits to songs. Again, lots of hours and money for the CD releases. We only got the first CD out. There were times in his life when he was frustrated, even angered, that his songs, people didn't know he had written some of his songs. We found some of his songs and chants in books listed traditional. He sort of admired the hippie sharingness side of paganism, but he also wanted people to get credit for their work. He also wanted to be known and remembered for his participation in bringing theater skills and concepts to ritual, as has been already mentioned. and for his discussion in the intersection of communication, consensus process, abundance thinking economy, facilitation, coordination, cooperation. He had a lot of thoughts on that, especially if some of you in email discussion groups came across some of that when he would be adamant, shall we say, if not accusing. He wanted to be remembered for that stuff, but mostly it wasn't documented. His thespian work, you know, his preferred profession, not the job he hated towards the end there, can be remembered. I mean, there are Italian movies with him in the role by Pupi Avanti. Pupi Avanti was one of the famous Italian directors, along with Fellini and Antonioni. And for some reason, Avanti did a series of Italian movies there in the Quad Cities, and Sparky was in it. Avanti really fondly loved Sparky and his roles. I remember the first movie when Sparky did his role, that was the Big Spider-Beck story. The movie was called Bix after he did his role. The Italian director came up and spoke some words in Italian. The translator said, "He likes you." Pupi went on, blah, 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 hand gestures, etc. The translator said, "He likes you very much." Blah, 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 even more gestures, a kiss on the cheeks, a hug. The Italian translator said, "He likes you very, very much." In later years, Pupi was able to speak some English, and it was fun. So there are Italian movies out there, and there's a couple local productions. For example, Beauty Queen Butcher. Oy, what a movie. But I have a DVD of it.
Beauty Queen Butcher?
Beauty Queen Butcher. Yeah, it's supposed to be and is camp. Wow, I have a role in it. Hey.
It's a follow-up to The Homecoming Queen's Got a Gun.
Can we find this on Netflix?
And so he's somewhat known for the thespian stuff, but we'd like to lyric and a saying from Charlie King. I don't know if you're Charlie King, old folk singer back around Arlo Guthrie days, etc. Catholic workhouse singer. And one of his lyrics is, "Our life is more than our work more than our job."
Yeah.
In his later years, Sparky had a job he hated, but he needed to do it for money. So much for the job side. And sometimes he wasn't too pleased with his life, but he was very pleased with the work, namely that he and Greg got to do this lunacy stuff. And there were times at his worst he'd say, "Well, at least I have that. There's the lunacy stuff, and that'll be out there, and people will remember." So, yay, thank you very much for doing that.
Yay.
Thank you.
I remember when I first met Sparky, with Circle Pines, Cog Grand Council, Mary Mead. We were just strolling around the grounds, and these two men came up, and we said hi. I said hi, and they said hi. The two men were Sparky and Stephen Posh. And we said our names, and he said, "What's your name?" I said, "Maka," and he said, "Are you Maka Nightmare?" Because I have this ridiculous name that's very memorable. And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Oh, I love that name." So that was our very first exposure to each other, which was positive from my perspective. And I think he introduced himself as Sparky. That would have been around 82 or 3.
Circle Pines, is that Michigan, Maka?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was 82. I was there.
It was the first one that was outside of California. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anna had
Although
asked
one
what
later
the
at some-
T is for.
I just answered.
The.
It is just the? Oh,
Yeah.
Around that time, some also knew him as the Big Blue Fairy because of the
Yeah,
right.
I
Well,
remember that.
Loretta Orion called him that, and he hated that, as far as I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
And she calls him Sonderberg in her book, but
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
But anyway, it was one of the things. When I left Reclaiming, we mentioned earlier, he's a no bullshitter. He does not put up with bullshit, and he's not necessarily gracious about it. But I left reclaiming, and I made a statement that was a public statement, and I knew I had to make a public statement because I have a public persona. And I told Starhawk ahead of time that I was going to. I didn't say what I was going to say because I didn't know, but I gave her a heads up because I figured it was the fair thing to do. And after 30 plus years, whatever it was, and I put the statement on my blog, and of course, all kinds of people had to come in and say stuff, good, bad, and indifferent. And Sparky would call him on all the bullshit they would give. He was my great defender. Maybe that's what made me feel so committed to make this happen, because I needed a defender then. And he was, unflappable, and he kept his, he was clear-headed about it, and he was not intimidated, and he was not in any way modified, or
Right.
he didn't do it. He didn't tone himself down for any reason. And it was in defense of me, and I didn't feel like I had a lot of people doing that then. So that was very meaningful to me. He also had a practice of not critiquing a ritual until 24 hours later, which I think is a good policy. And I did one at the Sacred Heart Festival called a witchual. We called it a witchual with two other priestesses, and he was there that week at that particular festival. He and Ivo Dominguez and I were like the guests, and I was dying to talk to him after it was over, and he was just laughing at me because I had to wait till the next day. It was okay though. Anyway, any more stories?
I have a question.
Oh, please do. Yes.
So, from what I know about him, truly Bugs Bunny is the sacred, just the speaker of truth. You're going to hurt someone with that old shotgun. Hey, what's up, Doc? And just speaking truth to power. And I'm partial. You can see it behind me here, the tarot card of the Fool, which I think of as a great grandpappy of the Radical Fairies. When you look at the tunic and the scalloped edges and all of that. But I just wondered, did Sparky do tarot? What was other parts of his ritual life like?
From my perspective,
Sure.
when I met him, he was into tarot. Matter of fact, one of the early birthday gifts I gave him was a big, colorful tarot book that he was very much wanting to buy.
Mm-hmm.
But after the 80s, from my perspective, he did very little tarot work.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time we got into this century, I don't remember him doing any tarot work. He had gotten more into runes, especially because of his Scandinavian heathen stuff.
That makes sense.
He had a bag of runes and would cast them, that sort of thing.
My other question. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Just brought up runes. The Maka mentioned the ritual Universe and Sky, and I wouldn't say that I saw him purposely use runes in a divinatory way, but they were very important symbols to him as ritual symbols. So he had the bind rune, the bind rune of Thor and Freyr, during their great rite. So just one example of how I saw him use those.
Yeah.
Yeah, the procession began with Mother Sun, which was a triple sun.
Oh.
And I was carrying the sun picture. I think it's on the website somewhere. And Melanie Archer was really young. That's Owl's son. And he had a little red cap on his mom's breast. And Kate had Sonia on her back in a backpack of a child. And then we were followed by the Man in the Moon, that was Owl. And then the Nighttime Stars, which was a bunch of little kids, and they had stars on their, a headband, a big star. And then they carried the offerings, the bread. It was lovely. It was lovely. And then behind them was Thor and Freyr, and each Thor and Freyr each had a rune bearer who had a banner with the rune. And this was the procession that started the whole thing through the whole campground. And then when we arrived at the
Mhm.
And everything was repeated. So it was 100% participatory. Everything the rehearsed participants said was
Mhm.
then echoed. It was kind of nursery rhymish,
Yeah.
you know, patted it on, that kind of stuff. I have the script. If
Oh, wow.
anybody feels inspired to recreate it, I still have the script because it was very unusual. And he picked the two hunkiest straight guys to do Thor and Freer. It was Keith, the artist who did the covers, and Elvis, if you got Elvis. And didn't have them kiss until the actual ritual, you know, the actual union. But then the rune banners were used in some way to join.
Yeah.
It's the way I'll remember it. Is that
You should perhaps say the hunkiest, straightish guys.
what did I say?
Straight guys. I'm going to say straightish.
Oh, okay.
And nothing more.
Anyway, it worked. It was quite amazing, and it was a one-time thing. This recording is not a one-time thing. This recording's out in the world. Yay, yay.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I have to say that Sparky had a wicked sense of humor.
He
We
did.
laughed so much when we were together, working or not. He was so funny. And I mentioned that he would come here to Kansas City and I would go there to his home in Rock Island. And when he would come to Kansas City, he had this giant ass station wagon. Like, though it was as long as our house. And Sparky was not a minimalist. He didn't travel lightly at all. Like loads of things, costumes and fabric and the puppets and tents for the puppets and his sleeping gear and then his clothes and then his ritual stuff. And it just like he would take over the entire first floor of just Sparky stuff. And he was so funny. He could be so funny. And also very pointed at times. But we laughed as much as we sang.
We laughed a lot too, yeah.
Yeah, he was very funny.
I also had a big long station wagon like that, as you might recall.
They
At
were so
PSG,
big.
we had 2 tents. One was a closet.
Wow.
So funny.
So we can be open-ended or we can wind down. I don't know how people are feeling. But if you want to do more talking,
It has been 90 minutes, so.
we do have time.
I'm good.
More music. Come on, play another song.
Okay, well, I'm gonna say then to play us out. Thank you to everybody for coming and for joining us in celebrating the revival of this beautiful and important contribution to pagan culture. We are what we create. We are what we do. We sing and celebrate ourselves, our lives, and our vast and splendid world. So now we're going to conclude with Round and Round.
Very appropriate for today, it seems.
Mm.
It has a long lead in, so it is playing.
And death again, and birth and life again. Oh, round and round and round and round through birth and life and death again, and birth and life again. Oh, round and round and round and round through birth and life and death again, and birth and life again. Oh, round and round and round and round through birth and life and death again, and birth and life again. Oh, round and round and round and round through birth and life and death again, and birth and life again. Oh, round and round and round and round through birth and life and death again, and birth and life again. Oh, round and round and round and round through birth and life life and death again, and birth and life again. Oh, round and round and round and round, through birth and life and death again, and birth and life again. Oh, round and round and round and round, through birth and life and death again, and birth and life again. Oh, round and round and round and round, through birth and life and death again, and birth and life again. Oh, round and round and round and round, through birth and life and death again, and birth and life again. Oh, round and round and round and round, through birth and life and death again, and birth and life again. Oh, round and round and round and round, through birth and life and death again, and birth and life again. Oh, round and round and round and round, through birth and life and death again, and birth and life again. Oh, round and round and round and round, through birth and life and death again, and birth and life.